civilization ceases and anarchy reigns. Here, bandits rule with brutal crimes against helpless border crossers.
The homicides, the rapes, the assaults, the stabbings, we all knew about the level of violence.
As the crime wave rises to a tsunami, it looks unstoppable. Then, a handful of determined law enforcement officers take a stand and form a new task force to tackle this deadly mission, earning the nickname the Last Gunslingers.
What we did was something that will never, ever be done again.
The border, the lawless frontier between Mexico and the U.S., where human traffickers, drug cartels, bandits, and killers ply their trade. And facing this invading army is a thin line of valiant U.S. law enforcement officers. Their stories now on Border Battles. So close to the United States, so far from God, the Mexican border. For almost 200 years, the flashpoint between two nations. In the 1970s, it becomes the territory of drug runners, thieves, and desperate aliens.
We were familiar with all of the crimes that were being committed by these alien robbers. The homicides, the rapes, the assaults, the stabbings, a man being shot in the face with a sawed-off shotgun while he's carrying his baby. A 15, 16-year-old girl being thrown to the ground. The assailant goes to have his way with her. She scratches him. She runs away. He jumps up. He picks up his rifle and shoots her in the back and kills her. And after the group is robbed, it's up to her 20-year-old brother to carry her back into Mexico. I knew, we all knew about the level of violence that these people were capable of.
Lieutenant Dick Snyder of the San Diego Police Department can no longer look on as lawlessness rages on the border. He envisions a special task force to fight back with unconventional tactics, and he approaches veteran officer Sergeant Manny Lopez to take command.
Initially, when I was contacted, it was a concept that was kind of foreign to me, in police work, and I was working way across town, supervising patrol officers at the time. He showed me a photograph of one of the victims who had been attacked by a gang in San Ysidro, and during the robbery of this particular guy, they had hit him with a 2x4 with nails, and they hit him in the face and split his face open. And so, after seeing this photograph, I told him that I would do it. I'd take the task force.
Now Lopez looks for his team.
We wanted primarily Mexican-looking officers. They may not be able to speak Spanish, but we wanted them to at least look Mexican because we were going to be out in the hills with nothing but Mexicans.
For this squad, Lopez and Snyder seek out motivated volunteers only.
Sergeant Manny Lopez explained to me what the detail was. I thought it was a little crazy, but I just was looking for some little different adventure.
I'd been in patrol for 5 years. I figured this would be a good opportunity to get out of uniform, so I said, sure, I'm game.
The task force was set up to protect the illegal aliens as they came across the border, which was never done in the history of any police department that I was aware of at that time in the United States.
Special training begins at Camp Elliott, a nearby Marine base.
We trained at this military base by crawling through the bushes and shooting guns, hand-to-hand combat, and running and jogging and that sort of thing. It was a totally new endeavor that I don't think anybody really knew what to expect. So the training, I think, was encompassing a little bit of everything.
Armed with a battery of unconventional tactics, the team is ready to deploy.
Initially, we were going to dress up in camouflage fatigues, go out into the hills, position ourselves in different areas where robberies were occurring, and then when we would see a robbery, we would just swoop down and arrest the bad guys.
But the task force's paramilitary tactics have a serious flaw.
By the time we get down to the location where it actually happened, the bandits were across the border already. So we weren't able to apprehend them. So we had to change their style of operation.
The border is a unique battleground requiring a radical new strategy. It may or may not work, and it is every bit as dangerous as it is bold.
It was decided that we were going to become the illegal aliens ourselves.
In the opposite of protective coloration against predators, the task force adopts the guise of the prey.
We could get up very close if we were undercover, dressed like illegal aliens, get very close to the suspects. We could apprehend them, and then we were available to testify if we ever decided to go to court.
The officers are putting themselves out as decoys, and so have to look exactly right.
So we went to a secondhand store. I think it was called a Value Village back then. And we bought multiple layers of clothing so that we could emulate the people coming north.
That's good. The reason illegal aliens would do this is they would have the outer clothing to cross through the rough terrain, and they would make it into a city. They would take those clothes off and throw them away, and they'd have clean clothes if they would just continue on going north, and you wouldn't be as conspicuous.
The cunning bandits are not easily deceived.
We had to adapt to a lot of things. They would look for clues to make sure that we were illegal aliens by asking you for a cigarette. And if you give them a Winston or a Viceroy, which they had back in the day, they're going to say, wait a minute, why are you smoking American cigarettes if you're coming from the interior of Mexico?
A single wrong detail can spell death on the border. A very real possibility the officers prepare themselves for. Unlike the unarmed border crossers, the officers carry lethal force under their disguises.
We had snub-nosed .38s with 5 shots. We had a small automatic shotgun with 5 shots.
One of the guys that was on the team took a semi-automatic shotgun, cut off the butt so that it would fit tightly up underneath your armpit.
The Border Crime Task Force gives the bandits the opportunity to go far enough for probable cause for arrest. Then, at Manny Lopez's signal, they spring the trap.
When he felt it was time for us to turn the tables on them, he would say B.A.R.F.
B.A.R.F is the acronym for Border Area Robbery Force.
So as soon as he said B.A.R.F, that we're in action. And we're policías and pulling out our guns and taking people down.
It's the task force, though, that has a dangerous surprise waiting for them in a place called Dead Man's Canyon. San Diego's border area robbery force disguise themselves as illegal aliens, down to the cigarettes they carry to prepare for encounters with ruthless bandits. And tonight, they face a shocking rendezvous in a part of hell called Dead Man's Canyon.
It was called Dead Man's Canyon because they actually found bodies in that canyon. And that was a starting point, and it was a waiting point for the aliens to come across.
Close to darkness, you'd see people start gathering to cross illegally into the United States. It was like a street fair up there. They had taco vendors, they had people selling water, they had people selling shoes, clothing, whatever you needed for your trek north, there were vendors up there selling.
Dead Man's Canyon is well known to the bandits. So now, on the task force's first night on undercover patrol, they head directly for this hotspot.
On this particular night, I really didn't know what to expect. I was hoping that we would encounter bandits and arrest them. I didn't know exactly how it would go down, what kind of resistance we would meet, what kind of weapons we were going to face. I was very confident that we could handle just about everything, even at the early stages.
Acting the role of prey, the task force can tell when the bandits are about to strike.
They click rocks together to signal one another that they have a possible victim, or they would whistle, or they would snap their fingers. These were signals they used amongst themselves. We would hear that, and we would sense that we were going to be set up for a robbery. That first night out, we heard those noises.
The undercover squad's tactics are working, it seems. They're soon approached by a suspicious group.
He thought, well, possibly we were going to be set up for a robbery. So as we took a passive position and squatted down and allowed these bandits to approach us, I had a sense of adrenaline. I thought, well, if they're going to rob us, we're going to have a surprise for them.
There was 3 of them, and this one walked past Manny Lopez and Tony Puente to get to me. I obviously felt something was going to happen because I took my gun out right away. As soon as I saw the opportunity, I pulled my gun out of my shoulder holster and I just kept it by my side.
The squad expects the robbers will spend some time sizing up their prey.
This was the first time we had been approached by bandits that night. We were very prepared. We had practiced and practiced and practiced. But sometimes you don't know what the bandits are going to do. In an instant, the guy has a gun on you and sticking it to your head. Guy has a knife to you and sticking it in your chest. And it's so dark in those canyons that you may be 3 feet away and not see that the bandit has a knife on your partner.
Now the team is caught off guard. Suddenly, the bandits strike. In a flash, a knife is on Eddie's throat.
I was the smallest guy on the team. Okay, so people like to pick on me. Sure enough, this guy comes straight at me, puts the knife to my throat.
In the darkness, the team can't see the extreme danger their partner is facing. Eddie Cervantes stands in the black depths of Dead Man's Canyon, the edge of a bandit's blade biting into his skin, ready to slit his throat. No battle plan, it's said, survives contact with the enemy. And tonight, in Dead Man's Canyon, the border area robbery force's professional training and tactics are upended by the unexpected sudden violent attack of the bandits they're hunting. In the darkness, only feet away, Officer Eddie Cervantes is trying to follow orders, while a bandit's knife is pressed against his neck.
I thought about shooting him as soon as he put the knife to my throat. I had my gun in my hand already, and I'm just holding back. I'm waiting there for Manny to give the code word, and it seems like forever with this guy holding a knife to my throat. We had to follow the discipline and wait for the code word to be given before we could take him down.
Eddie waits, knowing he's only a quick slash away from death. Time stands still as the bandit's blade presses against his throat. At last, Sergeant Manny Lopez shouts the signal for action.
When the guy swung at me with the belt, I didn't have my gun or anything out. So I jumped on him. And when I jumped on him, I took him down to the ground. And then I started hitting him.
It's a fight in the darkness. You can't see who you're grabbing, what you're grabbing. You don't know what they have in their hands unless you're right next to them.
Feeling the steel against his throat, Eddie Cervantes knows all too well what the bandit has in his hands.
My first instinct was to grab his knife, and I already had my gun in my hand. So what I did is I just put my shoulder into the guy, and he fell backwards, and the blade flew out of his hand. And I just jumped on him and the policia, and I put my gun in his face, and I said, "You," but in Spanish, you know, and I told him, "Well, what now? What now? You're not so tough now, aren't you? I could kill you. I could kill you." And I was upset, you know. I mean, he's telling me, "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. You know, I'm a coward. I'm a coward."
Cervantes' respect for his discipline and training keeps him from using his gun.
It's very easy to say, well, I would have blasted him away. But your partners are around also. I could have shot or killed. I think I would have regretted it if someone had been hurt. Everything worked out okay, so I think I made the right call at the time.
It wasn't afterwards that Eddie got his person in custody And I recall during the struggle, Eddie's yelling, "I can kill you, I can kill you." And we went to assist Eddie to handcuff his prisoner. And Eddie said he pulled a knife on him. No one knew. That's how dark it is down there.
Now comes the surrealism of describing on paper what happened in the dark.
When you do the report, after you've punched this guy in the face or in the jaw 3 or 4 times, you put down, use the force only necessary to effect the arrest.
They're doing everything in their power to try to get away from you. You know, if it means hitting you, I mean, that's what they're going to do to try to get away. So sometimes you just have to use the force necessary to overcome their resistance. So if you have to thump them, you have to thump them until you get control of them. I thumped him a couple times, and then I put the gun to his face, and I said, "I'll kill you right now." And then he realized that, don't kill me, don't kill me. So he complied. And that's the way it was worded in the police report.
The bandits are in custody. The task force has scored its first success. Then the team gets some shocking news. The night in Dead Man's Canyon is the Border Area Robbery Force's first victory, and one that teaches them that the value of their action reaches farther than they know.
We found out that these 3 guys had just robbed some other aliens, and they had cut one of the guy's throat because he didn't have enough money. And then they went to us. They thought we had money, and that's what happened. And then later is when Eddie told us, you know, what this guy did, and of course we had captured him and his knife and everything else. And that was probably the knife that was used to cut the other guy's throat.
The training, courage, and skill of the task force has saved one of the country's most innovative police operations.
Eddie could have been stabbed on our first night going out into Dead Man's Canyon. That would not have been good for Eddie or for the task force. It could have gone badly very quickly. And thanks to his quick reaction and his training, he was able to overpower this guy, and we came out okay. Because usually we would have the advantage of surprise. In this case, the surprise came from them.
The training for the task force continues, now out on the border.
After that first night of arresting these first bandits, we learned everybody was a possible suspect. Everybody was a possible bandit. You keep close watch on their hands at all times. You never know if it's going to be a knife, a stick, a boulder, or a gun. We were approached one time with a rifle, so you never know.
When we would go to the range, we knew that the way we were taught to shoot as police officers was not what happens to you in real life when you get into a shooting situation. Shootings were 2, 3, 5 feet apart, and you're shooting back and forth at each other, or you're being attacked with a knife, and all of a sudden it happens to you like that. So with all the training that we had, we were probably the best trained group in the San Diego Police Department. Well, there was no doubt. We were the best trained group in the San Diego Police Department.
The bandits would dub us with different names amongst themselves, and one of them was Los Suatos, because the media had portrayed us out there after a few incidents that we were Vietnam veterans with commando training, and that we were now patrolling the hills or SWAT training, and they would call us the Suatos.
Like the no man's land they patrol, the Border Area Robbery Force's tactics and mission are uncharted territory in the annals of law enforcement.
The further we went into this, we realized that it wasn't just different, it was unique. Nobody else had ever done this. Nobody else knew how to do it. We had no guide to go by, so we learned by trial and error.
This was like going back to the Old West. It was gunfights, free-for-alls in the canyon, just like saloon brawls. You're fighting somebody in the dark, and there's no rules of engagement. It was protect yourself, protect your partner, and get home alive.
After this first night, I go, what am I doing here? Is it worth it? It's different, at least in a police uniform. They know who you are. And the danger here was that if they had known I was a police officer, they probably wouldn't have put the knife to my throat. But they suspected that I was just a poor farm worker trying to head north.
After 19 months on the border area robbery force is disbanded in the late 1970s because their work is deemed too dangerous. During the time they operated, they arrested more than 300 criminals. But would their high-risk, high-reward methods work on today's border problems?
The way we did our work back then as undercover illegal aliens, allowing the bandits to prey on us and to rob us, wouldn't work today. The bandits, the cartels are too sophisticated. They have too many weapons, and they'd rather shoot than sit and talk with you and set you up for a robbery. They'd rather shoot you now and just take your money or your belongings. So I don't think it would work these days. Different breed of cat.
Yet the officers, known as Los Suatos, can take lasting pride in the job they once did on the border.
After the whole thing was over, and you look back on it, even today, I look back on it and I realize that what we did was something that will never, ever be done again. We were the first ones to do it, the way we did it. And we cleaned house. We took care of business out there. And no matter what differences you have, you can say, these were the bravest men that I've ever seen. And I got to work with them. And I was their leader. And I'm just extremely proud of that. I mean, what we did, nobody will ever do again. Nobody.